What's up, everybody? It's Dan, Binder Boneyard, coming at you from the office. Beautiful September day. Hopefully you are out enjoying the final throes of summer. Appreciate everybody that listens. I talk to a fair amount of you, and it's always nice to get the feedback and to know that people actually are listening, because sometimes I wonder. But yeah, I appreciate the follows and the likes, and telling other people, and since I don't really charge for these things, it's nice when you tell other people and introduce them to the podcasts, and because they're all helpful. I try to give just the best information I can and what my experiences have been and whatnot. So so if they help out other people, then that's the whole point of the exercise here. I know they can be dry sometimes, and it's kind of boring when it's just me droning into the mic, but it is information that everybody can use, I feel like. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much. So it being September, we are cooling off. I noticed some Facebook posts. People are starting to put their tops back on, their Scouts, and their kind of, the final car shows of the year, and football games and things like that. So we'll do, this episode is going to be about winterization and putting them away for the year. Because not everybody is blessed to live in the South, Texas and Arizona and California. That's only a small segment of international owners. So there's varying degrees of winterization, and I know you guys up in Maine, you already know what is going on. But I'll try and cover some things that, it's just good to do. Hopefully this episode motivates you to go out and do the things that maybe you put off or you don't do, and then you always regret the following year. So first and foremost, the most important thing, if you're parking the rig for the season, is the fuel system. Ethanol gas is terrible on carburetors and fuel pumps and stuff like that. So I would recommend running the fuel tank as low as you can. Get as much of that ethanol gas out of the system as you can, and then try and fill the tank with non-ethanol if that's available in your area. I know some states you can't get non-ethanol, so yeah, that makes it tough. But I would recommend filling the tank to the top with non-ethanol, because one, you want a full tank to keep it from rusting. The fuel tanks rust when they've got half a tank in them, and the top half that's exposed to air, even though it's kind of a sealed system, there's still vents and whatnot, they will rust from the inside out. So having them parked with a full tank goes a long ways towards keeping the tanks from rusting out, unless you have one of our fancy aluminum tanks, and then you don't have to worry about it. But the non-ethanol will help keep the carburetor and the fuel pump good. So yeah, fill it up with non-ethanol and then run a gallon or two through it, just to make sure that you've got it all in the system, and that should get you through. If you live in an area that does not offer non-ethanol, or some other reason that you don't want to do it, I have heard of people dumping a bottle of Marvel mystery oil into the fuel tank. That has some sort of effect on counteracting the ethanol. and or seafoam, the engine treatment seafoam. If you put that in the fuel system, that's supposed to do something for the ethanol factors as well. I personally have not done that. I haven't tried that. I drive my stuff year round, so I don't normally deal with that. But there has been some anecdotal evidence on the internet that adding something like that will help with the ethanol damage that that can happen in the carburetors and whatnot. But you should put something in the fuel system to stabilize it if it's going to sit for 4 or 5 months. Even if you've got it in a garage and you can go out and you can start it, once a month and get it up to temperature and shut it down, that's still, letting ethanol sit in the carburetor for a month can create problems. So, I'd really still recommend the fuel treatment or non-ethanol in the fuel system. The next thing I recommend before it gets put away is oil change. If it's been a few years, if you're right on the edge, if you put 3,000 miles on it and you're not sure, do an oil change. Dump a quart of ATF in your oil. Go take it for a drive. Half hour, so something like that, running around, and then change the oil. Put in your good oil, your Rotella, your Dello 1540. Make sure you dump in your bottle of zinc additive, and then park it for the year. The ATF in the oil helps break up carbon and sludge that's in the valve train and that collects in the engine, and it helps it bring it back down to the down into the oil pan. So then when you drain your oil, then the crap comes out, most of it. There's some arguments that doing that kind of thing will introduce more carbon and junk to the oil pan, and then it could potentially plug your pickup screen in the oil pump. But if you have that much garbage in your engine, you were on borrowed time anyways. So, but it works. Put a quart of ATF in there, get it up to temperature, run it for a little bit. You don't want to leave it in there long term because it can thin the oil down a little bit. But the old ATF and the oil trick, it does work. It does loosen up. It does clean. It's a detergent. It cleans the carbon out of there. So you do it once a year like that. You do it on your final oil change of the year. It's just a good habit to get into. And then, like I said, you put your 1540 diesel oil in it, new filter, of course, your zinc additive for that flat tappet cam. Run it again after the oil change. Make sure you run it for 20, 30 miles. And then you can put it away for the year. And then you're good for the next year when you go to get it out. Oil's good, up to level, all that stuff. And then, from there it's kind of secondary stuff like checking, I shouldn't say secondary, but coolant. The coolant is important. If it's in an insulated garage, not as critical. If it's been 4 or 5 years, or you don't remember when the last time the coolant was changed, you might want to do a flush and change on the cooling system, just because it's every 5 years is a good time to do it. Gets the gunk out, gets the rust out, and antifreeze does deteriorate over time. So it's not as I don't want to say potent, but doesn't work as well over time. So, but you guys that are leaving your rigs outside or under a tarp or in a lean-to, it's super critical that your coolant is, fresh, clean, up to the level, and all of that. So double check your coolant level before you put it away for the year. If you have battery problems, I know it's the wiring on so many of your guys' trucks is terrible, and I hear it all the time from people that, oh, my battery keeps going dead and I don't know what to do. Well, you got a short somewhere, you got something drawing, and it needs to be addressed. But if you didn't get to it this year, make sure that you disconnect that battery when you put it away for the season. It gives, make sure the battery is fully charged before you disconnect it. That helps with it lasting for the season. Cold weather is hell on batteries for sure, but you do give it a fighting chance when it's fully charged and put away. If you can't do that, or you want to start it every month or whatever, then I really recommend the battery tender, a little trickle charger that you can keep plugged in, or something like that. The other thing is the disconnect. They make these various disconnects that you can put on the batteries that you throw a lever or you undo a wing nut, and then so it's easier to rehook the battery back up, so that you don't, it's less of a hassle. But I still, I recommend disconnecting the battery, unless, like I said, you're going to start it, you're going to drive it or whatever, then, put a battery tender on it. Make sure the tires are all aired up to the proper air pressure. Nothing's more of a bummer than, parking it on squishy tires and then over a season, then, you have one go flat or something, the sidewalls get cracked from being bulged out or whatever. So make sure your tires are up to pressure, and then there's more regional type stuff. If you live in a really moist climate, like a lot of you do, I'm sure most everybody knows this stuff, but you get like the plastic containers of desiccant, I think it's called. It's like an air dryer. You get one or two of those, put them on the floor in the front and back of the rig, on the Scout, put one on the driver's floor and one in the bed area in the back. That helps keep the moisture, condensation and stuff down from the inside of the truck. That helps with some of that musty smell that you get when they sit for a little while. So that kind of thing. Put out some poison for rodents if you've got a lot of rodents in your area. Don't put the poison in the Scout. Put it under it or near it, unless you've got dogs or animals you're worried about, then put it in. And there's two schools of thought, that like some people say, oh, don't put poison in there because then it attracts them, and then they'll get in there and they'll be interested in what you've got, and then they'll eat your wiring and then die. Or then there's the other school that's put it in there so that when they get in there, then they die. I'm from the second category. Rodents will get into stuff no matter what. No matter how much you try. I mean, we've got a couple of cats that run around the yard here. We take care of stuff, and it still never fails. I'll, get into a truck that I hadn't opened the door on in a month, and there'll be mouse poop on the floor. Like, no reason for a mouse to be in there whatsoever, but for some reason they're in there. So, yeah, poison is a good thing to think about. And yeah, it's kind of a bummer because if it does, a mouse or a rat gets it and then it goes up into the dash and dies, well, then you've got to deal with that. But I would much rather clean out a dead rat carcass than have my heater box completely packed full of all the foam from my seat. And you laugh, but that's exactly what happens. They pull the jute backing out of the floor insulation, or out of the bottom of the seat, and then they pack it into the heater box or the glove box or on top of the AC manifold, and then come springtime, you go to start it and you're like, what the hell? Everything catches on fire, or your heater doesn't work because it's packed full of mouse house, or, whatever. So I'd rather just deal with a dead animal and get it out of there quickly than have to disassemble stuff to fix whatever damage that they had done before. And I know sometimes it's not as easy. You can deter it some. Make sure you don't have any open holes in the floor. Make sure your shifter boots are good and tight. Make sure you got grommets around the wiring. Make sure your air vents are closed. Make sure, some guys put plastic or something across the cowl vent to keep anything from going down into the cowl. And I would recommend doing that too if you park your rig outside for the season, just to keep leaves and debris from going down into that cowl. Making sure just everything is sealed up as best you can. And then, like I said, it's less inviting for critters that way. But it's still, having some poison out is not a terrible idea. Oh, excuse me. What else? Desiccant, rat poison. If you're going to use a car cover, make sure it's good and tied down, that it's not going to beat up the truck. They do flap. If you don't have them tied down the best, and the wind gets a hold of them and starts flapping around, it'll beat the bejesus out of the paint. And, you think you've got a good cover on there, and then you peel the cover off and you've got all this tarp burn. Or guys will put a nice soft cover on, and then you throw a tarp over the top of that. Just make sure it's strapped and bungeed down very well. Nothing's worse than middle of winter, bad storm comes through, you look out the window and there's half of your tarp is laying on the front yard. So, I'm, like I said, I'm not one to talk. All my stuff lives outside. I drive it every day anyway, so it's getting moved and it's mobile, but the stuff I don't drive every day just has to live out in the weather. And here in Central Oregon, it's pretty mild, mid 90s for the highs in the summer, and, teens and 20s for the winter. It does get into the negatives for like a week in December, but for the most part, we're pretty lucky here. But it's still hard on stuff. You get snow blowing in on things, and moisture does get into stuff. But we're lucky here. So I know you guys in other parts of the country are not so lucky, and it's really, you really should have some sort of, at least a lean-to, to just cover it in general. But yeah, the more inside you can keep the truck, the better. But I know that's not for everybody's budget. And that's why I'm doing this podcast, to try and at least give your rigs a fighting chance for another season. Some guys go as far as to like put oil in the rockers and do the whole rust preventative thing. You undercoat the wheel wells and that kind of thing. And if you want to go that far, you can, but I'm just more talking about for basic storage stuff. I've even seen guys jack their trucks up and put them on jack stands for the season, so the tires don't get flat spots on them. And I would, that's a good recommendation as well. If you got some short jack stands, because you only got to get it in the air just enough to get the tires off the ground. That's not a bad thing to consider either. If it's going to sit, you got $1,500 worth of tires there. The last thing you want is for them to flat spot or get weird. So that's something to consider as well. But yeah, like I say, just making sure that it's sealed up good, your door gaskets are good, there's no open holes to anything. Your grommets and the wiring is all up to snuff. That helps keep animals out, keeps the weather out, makes them live a little bit longer. Get some of that air dryer stuff if you've got carpet. And then, yeah, like I was saying before about the mechanicals, it's all kind of no-brainer stuff, but it's really important that you do it before it gets parked for the year, so that when next spring, you can hook up the battery, give her a couple pumps, and fire it up. I would do a visual on it, before you started, just to make sure an animal didn't chew off half your plug wires, or your cat didn't make a nest in your fan blades. But yeah, I'm sure there's stuff I'm forgetting, but that's just the basics. Like, really, stuff to consider for the longevity of, just they're not getting any better. They're just continuing to rust from the inside out. Even you guys with your California restored scouts that are in the Midwest now, they're not taking them apart and painting the inside of all those panels. That fancy scout that you paid $90,000 for is still rusting from the inside out. So, doing things to make it last a little bit longer, it just makes sense. So, you might think that your scout's good and you've got nothing to worry about, but nah, it's a silent killer. And it will crawl out from the inside and surprise you. So, yeah. Anyway, so it's a short one today. That's just what I was thinking about, and hopefully that gave you some ideas, and or at least motivated you to take care of your stuff for another season. But anyway, I thanks everybody for listening. I appreciate you very much. I love you all. You are the best. And until next time, I'm Dan from Binder Boneyard.